Welcome back at WNST, Towson, Baltimore, and Baltimore Positive. We are positively out doing the finale of the Maryland Crab Cake Tour. We're going to be, we were in Eldersburg on Wednesday, at the Rock Salt Grill on Friday in Westminster. And on Tuesday, we will conclude at least the live portion on the 30th. Our 30th Crab Cake will be at Costas Inn with future Governor Wes Moore. Also going to be joined by Pam Wood of the Baltimore Banner, as well as Mickey Coachella, who has promised to bring his Blue Act over to Dundalk. We're going to be having brewery time with Heavy Seas. I'm also going over to Key Brewing this weekend. I'm going to be in Dundalk on Sunday at Scoozy's. I've never been to Scoozy's. I'm looking forward to it. I remember it was a house in Neptune. It's all brought to you by our friends at the Maryland Lottery in conjunction with our friends at Goodwill, Window Nation, and the Restaurant Association of Maryland. Marshall Weston going to join us on Friday talking about all the restaurants in the state and Restaurant Week beginning September 16th to the 25th. This guy will be participating over there in Catonsville. I'm sure he'll be at the Beaumont trying to save a buck and take advantage of a few things. What's going on, Don Mohler? Happy Recon to you. We haven't been in the same room in a little while. You've been off like running around Alaska doing things like that, looking for Russia from Sarah Palin's house.
From Wasilla. But I am going to journey over to one of my favorite places in Baltimore County, Dundalk and Costas, and do a little in-person Baltimore Positive with you next week. Who doesn't want to see Pam Wood and Mickey and, of course, gubernatorial candidate Wes Moore? Speaking of Crab Cake Tour, part of your Crab Cake Tour took you down to the biggest, what do we call it? A palooza, political palooza held in the state every summer in Ocean City. You went to Mako. What was the Mako vibe, Nestor? It's the gathering where all of the counties come together and do their business, and the people that work in government go to sessions about how to improve government. But as folks know, the real magic sauce of Mako is the fact that elected officials and businessmen and women and lobbyists, everybody from all across the state descend on Ocean City. What was your vibe? What was your takeaway from Mako this year?
And maybe it's just me and where I am and driving by all these farms and seeing cock signs and anti-Biden stuff. A lot less of the anti-Biden stuff this year. And I'm talking about from Sharpsburg to Oakland, across Pennsylvania. I saw plenty of it, but I saw less of it. I think the one thing that I felt like I saw a little bit, and again, I was there for a magic moment with Aruna Miller standing next to Boyd Rutherford and shaking hands at a crab feast and seeing Wes Moore bump into Larry Hogan, literally, along the pathway. And I'm standing in a circle with Johnny O, Barry Glassman, and Mark Elrich from Montgomery County. So I wind up in these circles with Democrats, Republicans, left and right, Eastern Shore, Western Shore, Baltimore people. I saw Brandon Scott. I saw my dear friend, former intern and producer here, Sean Stinnett, who works for Brandon Scott now in the city. So I saw people from all walks. I saw lobbyists, just business people. John Martin sat down with me from the Maryland Lottery. It was just a wide swath of people. I would say the one thing that I don't want to say bipartisanship, but I'm not used to seeing Republicans and Democrats get along. Right? I mean, I was down in Salisbury with Republican delegate Carl Anderton sitting next to Democratic Mayor Jake Day talking about how they're moving Wycomico County and the downtown Salisbury area together. And it's not fake. I mean, it's like when you and me and Barry Glassman get together. We like each other. It's not fake. You know what I mean?
Right. No. I think that what you're alluding to has always been, and hopefully it will continue. Hopefully we'll figure out a way in the nation to replicate it, although I think that's a heck of a challenge.
But Helen Dallas Bentley and Ted Venetoulas didn't say nasty things about each other. They worked together, right?
That's what I mean is that in local government, I mean, you know, we've had Todd Crandall on, we've had David Marks on for Baltimore County. In local government, Democrats and Republicans don't always necessarily agree, but it's been a tone of how you disagree that's much more traditional and I think much more palatable to voters. I mean, my one, and I'm glad to hear you talk about there being some air of bipartisanship at Mako this summer, because the one thing that I continue to hone in on there, that the American voter, other than other than that 25 to 30%, we'll put them in a different bucket for a minute. But most voters in the United States, I am convinced, do not like partisan bickering. They just don't. I know I have this discussion with my son, who is certainly more moderate than I am. He's a businessman. He's more moderate than his sister is, but his takeaway always is, I just don't understand why the parties have to beat each other's throats all of the time. And you
Well, I
use,
mean, and the greatest example with this, right? Hot and bothered, $10,000 for college. That if you're a Republican, you have to go. I hate Joe Biden on that.
right.
I mean, it's kind of insane, right? Like, I got no dog in that hunt, but I know a lot of people, and you served a lot of people and taught a lot of kids that have a lot of debt based on ambition and based on doing what society wants us to do, which is become better educated, right? And
What
and have higher education and move to a better life and a better job through education, right?
Well, I think that issue, Nestor, is a great example, because someone, I got home, I had a meeting last night. When I came in, Linda said one of her friends had texted and said, "Hey, I'm curious what Don thinks about the $10,000 reduction in student debt." And very unlike me, I didn't have an instant reaction. I very often, I pretty much know what I feel what I feel at this point in my life. On that issue, I get both sides. And I think what I hear you saying is, I would
Why would
like,
you be mad that one of your neighbors got 10
right.
grand in relief for going to college when they paid too much to go to college to begin with?
Well,
To show you that college is a bad deal, they're stuck in debt. And that piece of paper they had that I always felt like was worthless. No offense to you. I remember when you were trying to get me into Delaware back in 1984, right? Like, you and I were in that little room off the guidance council, right off of where the principal's office was, that had all the computer paper in there. And I'm seeing every college, Stanford, places I
GIS
couldn't
machine.
go.
That was called the GIS machine.
Perfect. I remember being in that room with you in 1984 and you telling me college, I have my degree. I found it recently, my University of Baltimore degree, a BS, which I thought was very appropriate, a BS, in corporate communication. They thought I was going to be Chad Steele when I grew up and work as a PR guy in some sports team or something. And that was never a pathway for me to be the PR guy for MPT or even for Jim Smith or for Kevin Kamenetz, right? But I went to school for that 30 years ago. Nobody's ever asked me for it. I've never shown it to anybody. I could have lied and said it was a BA in something for journalism and whatever I want. Nobody's ever checked back on that. And I didn't have debt, right? So the Baltimore Sun had a deal when I worked there. They paid half the tuition. It wasn't all that much money because I went to UB. I went to Dundalk Community College, as you know. I talked to Dr. Kurtnitis about that all the time. It was an affordable way. But I would not be a fan right now of my 19-year-old grandkid accruing $64,000 of debt to go to
Well,
Virginia Tech or whatever a year. Like,
there,
I wouldn't be a fan of that right now. I really wouldn't be.
and again, Nestor, hopefully what will come out of this, well, let me back up. When I say I was conflicted, I think it is important when we can to help people make their lives better. I do believe that is a principle that we should stand for. Now, that does tend to divide very often Democrats and Republicans. The part that sounds, and then I want to get to your affordability question, the part that always hits me as disingenuous is when, in this case, Republicans, you could almost predict their reaction. It's a giveaway. It's unfair. The Wall Street Journal came out and said, it puts more burden on the back of the FedEx driver who can't afford to send his kids to college, and therefore he's paying for somebody else's kids. They never raise that question when it's about tax cuts and tax relief for the wealthy. They don't mind giving away taxpayer dollars to the, and that's the
And we've been doing
discussion.
that for 20 years, 30
And
years.
we should, yeah, and that's a discussion worth having. But I understand. Listen, as someone who scrimped and scraped, and I can remember after we had paid for a wedding and made our last college tuition payment, Linda and I looked at each other and said, "Whoa." It's almost like we get a raise. We paid 2 tuitions. We paid a wedding. Oh, okay. Now we can breathe a little bit. So I understand folks who worked an extra job, who didn't take that big vacation so that their child didn't have to take a loan saying, geez, I don't know, I worked pretty hard. But I think we all try to, as you're doing, try to move past that and say, well, if this helps a few people down the street,
If this
on my
helps
block,
people under 40 all over the country
right,
who've done 4 years of college, they bought into all of this, they graduated, and they've got $84,000 in debt and a job where they're making 42 grand a year, to say to all of them, you did your thing. The government's gonna come in and help you a little bit with 10 grand. I don't. I have no problem with that. And that's not the Democrat or the liberal in me. That's the, help people, help the people that are building the country.
Yeah, it's the humanity.
That's a simple thing.
And I think that's the tone of the discussion. So again, how does all this relate back to your discussion of Mako? It's that we hope that we can have more of these, we don't have to agree on how to get from A to B, but it doesn't have to be this zero-sum game of scorched earth that where we are right now. Now, you mentioned, which I hope this debt reduction leads to a real examination, and I would encourage the president, almost, I think I'm in favor of a blue ribbon commission to put together to look at the cost of college affordability. I think by all accounts, Nestor, in the last 20 or 30 years, colleges have increased 30, 40, sometimes almost 50%. And that's not sustainable. It's not acceptable. As you said, sitting down and looking at
college. Well, if the government gave money to these colleges and just giving money away, nobody'd have any problem with that. We don't have any money. We don't have any problem with giving money to University of Maryland, Coppin, giving money even to private schools, like making it more giving aid to the way these universities need to run, so professors make $100 grand a year, right?
Right, but yeah, well, yes, and again, there are so many components to why college costs have increased, but they certainly should not have increased to the point where they are now, where students look, as you said, at a year of college costing $60,000, $65,000. College can't become just a vehicle for those in the upper middle class and those well-to-do in this nation. That's not the American dream, in my sense. So we've got to get a handle on why college costs, why it does. We've got to begin to drive that back down, because this is just simply not sustainable. So
we've been doing this for a long time with college scholarship funds. I mean, back in 1985 when I was there, if you were an exceptional kid from Turner Station at Dundalk High, and you got straight A's. I ran into an exceptional kid from Dundalk High. You ready for this? You kind of came to Dundalk when I came. You might not have known. Do you know Corey Pack?
Oh yeah, sure. Corey went on. I went to say, is it Corey? One of the, I can't remember.
He's in Talbot County. I ran into him at the crab feast at Mako. I saw a guy across the room at the crab feast. I said to my wife, I'm like,
it's one of the great Dundalk.
One of the great Dundalk. And I don't know why he's familiar to me. And then he got up on me and it said C. Pack. And he was taking a picture with Wes Moore. I have pictures of him taking pictures with Wes Moore. I went up and said, you went to Dundalk? He's like, yeah, I went to Dundalk. He's running Talbot County. He's been a representative down in Easton for years. He's going to come on the show in a couple of weeks. I owe him a crab cake, but he's old school Dundalk. He was one of the guys we looked up to. He was an older kid who was a great athlete. Obviously became a great person.
Pack,
is a great person.
You can go down the list.
But I'm saying, if in that case, what were the scholarships on the GIS when you took little Nestor from Dundalk, Hispanic Nestor, into the back room? We had no rich kids in Dundalk. We had gifted and talented kids, but there was nobody in Dundalk that couldn't have used help in college, whether they were getting bussed in from
Correct.
Overly, Lock Raven. My friend John Kiefer went on to become a teacher forever. My friend Mike Doherty was gifted and talented. He's banging the drums out in Seattle. I mean, I have friends all my life that were exceptional. I mean, Frank Vanek, my God, he went to Virginia Tech. I don't
Frank
know
was
what
brilliant. Frank,
aid
one of
was
the
available
smartest.
then, but
Yeah.
the notion that I'm really smart and I go to Dundalk and I got straight A's and I can't afford Stanford, but can I get into Towson and can I get some help? You know what I mean? Like, it feels to me like there's been a whole army of energy all of my life to help people get into college, help them get over that bar that they can qualify and whatever. But then they get out and they got $184,000 in debt
Right.
and they went to school for PR. They're getting a job for 40 grand. How are they ever going to pay that back? You know, I mean,
Right.
that's a warped system for me that in my mind as a kid, it was always about, can I get in? Can I get in? Can I get in? Not, is it going to get me a job where I can actually pay for it if I
Well,
became a doctor, a lawyer, a dentist, you know, a medical school, 6, 8 years, you go to grad school and you start to rack that up even more. How much money do you have to make to start putting aside 20 grand a year the first 8 years of your college or of your real life to just pay for college? I didn't deal with that, but I know that the fears that I had 40 years ago about college or not going to college that were thrust upon you as my guidance counselor, I can't imagine what that feels like in 2022, to your point, where it's not, can I get in? It's, how the hell am I ever going to pay
right.
for it if I get in and I even achieve?
Well, yeah. I mean, I think you've capsulated. I mean, that's a really a wonderful summary of the issue. And I think we know that only about half of the young people in the country, or half the people in the country, have college degrees, either from an associate's up through an advanced degree.
What's it going to
And
cost your granddaughter to go to school? She went for a year down in Virginia. She's down in
she's
North
at
Carolina now, South Carolina.
UNCW,
Well, what
University of
is,
North
what's the
Carolina,
bill? What,
Wilmington.
it's going to 200 grand for her to go to college?
Well, Nestor, that's a great question. I think I've said to you before, there's this other thing that's going on in higher education that's really kind of strange, and you don't realize it until you see it. It's like buying a car. The sticker isn't the sticker. So I would tell you that, having now been through this several times, that when you're done, by the time they give you grants and other things and some financial aid, it looks to me that it ends up being somewhere between 30 and 40,000 a year. That's at a school that might be
Okay, so
50 or 60.
your
So
beautiful
you're
granddaughter is
looking at
20 years old.
120.
She's going to have a $200,000 education that somebody's going to pay for, whether it's Joe
Correct.
Biden, Uncle Don, her parents, her off of her ass of the job that she's going to have
Correct.
8 years from now. How much money is she going to make when she gets out of?
Well,
What is she going to make? 50 grand a year, 60 grand a year, 70 grand a
yeah,
year,
that's the
80 grand?
question.
Okay, so she's going to make that. How is she ever going to, like, when you sit at a table as the grown up and she's 17 years old and your daughter's weepy, she wants her to go to college and be all of that. Where's the math in this over the next 20 years
Well,
that she's going to get out, get a job, become employed by somebody, the state? She's going to work at the crab feast. She's going to be a school teacher, wherever she's going to be. I don't know what she's going to school for. And I'm not even singling out your beautiful granddaughter, but it's real to you. It's not real to me. I
oh
mean,
yeah, no, it's real, and I think it's why you see more and more families. I think it's why you see people all across the nation calling for more apprenticeship programs, more technically centered programs. I mean, they're particularly in this current economy, there are thousands and thousands of jobs across this nation that do not require a college degree, where you can get the training on the job. And as you said,
well, I
begin to
do this
get
with Goodwill. I do this with, I mean,
right.
we every day we're featuring help wanted, jobs needed, like all of that. But the skill set that people are going to college for is not flipping burgers, for sure. For sure.
Right. No. It's the healthcare field. It's the IT field. Certainly. I mean, I've never had, and you've been through a whole home renovation issue over the past year. I have yet to have a plumber or an electrician come to my home who doesn't say to me, "Hey, Mr. Mohler, if you can get any kids to come work for us, we'll train them. We just can't get them." And I mean, electricians, plumbers, carpenters, all of those jobs, right, are out there. and they're good paying jobs. They're family supporting jobs. So I think the economy really is in a reset, and we're going to see it's really going to be a challenge. And I hope that part of that discussion is the cost of college, because that has to be addressed, because this $10,000 relief isn't sustainable to do it over and over and over again. It's
Well, but you say, I mean, you say to me, we're getting, you're getting grants, you're getting student aid. Where's that aid coming from?
Well,
The
they have
university's giving
foundations.
money away, then they're going to have to give money to the university, right? I mean, these
No,
universities are all funded by tax dollars to some degree.
No. Many of them have huge foundations and huge fundraising efforts, philanthropic supporters. You know, a Bill Gates or someone gives X millions, or Michael Bloomberg gives X millions to Hopkins.
Or Kevin Plank just makes sure the football team
to make sure. Yeah, Kevin Plank giving millions to the University of Maryland. So it's a topic that I'm sure we will be revisiting over and over and over. So,
well, I'm glad I talked about it with you, because you're Teddy Roosevelt. You've been an educator. You've been trying to get people like me into college since 1982, because you tried to get me into college. I remember vividly you and I sitting there talking about Penn State and Delaware and my dreams and places I wanted to go and things I wanted to do when I was a kid. And you've done this with kids, grandkids, other people's kids forever. I would think that it's a hot button for you. It's something you've always been involved in, like sports for me.
Yeah, I just think it's something you've been passionate, as long as I've known you, that education is the way forward. I think we believe the more educated our populace is, the better our nation will be.
I mean, honestly, I think that's what my program is at this point. It's education for adults, for people who like me.
No, we go to class.
I think that's literally what I do now. Literally.
Well, speaking of education and what happened, there have been, since we last talked, again, there have been a couple more primaries, and there's sort of this canary in the coal mine, right? You and I will be counting down to November. It's going to be very, very fascinating. And this week in upstate New York, there's this strange situation where we had a special election where a congressman had passed away. So a Democrat, two former county executives, so folks with governing experience, very popular in their own districts, a swing district, a district that had voted for Trump in 2016 and switched by a narrow margin to Biden in 2020. The Democrat, Pat Ryan, won that district. That is an election that a month or two ago, no one thought Democrats were going to win that election. So,
Roe v. Wade is an issue. Trump's lying is an issue. Every day, somebody's waking up and saying, "I voted for Hitler. I voted for a traitor. I voted for a guy who's in with the Saudis and in with the Russians, and had people kill cops on the square. I sanctioned Donald Trump, and I'm appalled by that. There are people who they're not out on the front lawn or out on Facebook saying, "I can't believe I sanctioned that."
Well, let's jump back. Let's jump back to your first point before we get to the celebrity ex-president. You mentioned Roe v. Wade, the Dobbs decision. Nestor, we don't know yet, and making predictions in politics is a dangerous thing. But it certainly appears now we're beginning to put together some data points, right? We had Kansas, where almost 60% in conservative, red as red gets Kansas, people voted to say, you're going to leave this protection in our state constitution. You now have this election of Pat Ryan, who now has to run again. Weirdest thing, right? When you win a special election, you're just filling out that term. So he will run in a new congressional district in November. He'll have to pull the same magic off again. But you've got Pat Ryan winning. And Nestor, do you know what Pat Ryan's yard signs said?
No.
Very simple. His name was actually pretty small on the sign. His yard sign said, choice is on the ballot. I think you're going to see that more and more and more, because there's another third data point I wanted to talk about is if you look at voter registration since the Dobbs decision, women are outpacing men by a fairly significant number.
As are
So-
Democrats to Republicans in registration.
So you and I, geez, Nestor, I want to go back. It might be 18 months ago now. We talked about the abortion issue, and we were talking about whether or not it motivated people, young people, to go to the polls. And a number of folks had written, and my observation had been this, that for 50 years, the women's right to protect her own reproductive system was protected law in the United States of America. Therefore, that issue really did not animate.
But
Young
also,
wait a minute,
we've
let me
all
finish.
seen two of these justices get up and blatantly lie.
Okay, but wait a minute. Let me finish my
They've
point.
lied about. They've lied on this
I hear you.
issue to get appointed.
But let me finish my point though, and then we'll come to that. That it wasn't really an issue that amped up young women in the United States, because women like my daughter, who's getting close to 50 years old, she'll hate that I say that, it's hard for me to believe that, have never lived in a United States where those rights weren't protected. Here's what happened with Dobbs. All of a sudden, those women woke up one day and said, whoa, I thought these rights were going to be protected forever. It never motivated me to go to the polls before. But if you're telling me now that this right is not protected, and Nestor, here's
my
what
mother was born, and there was no right for her to vote the day she was born.
Correct. And here's what they know. Here's what these young women know. This is not hard to predict. Should the Republicans gain control of the Senate and the House, one of their first pieces of legislation will be a federal ban on abortion, taking away a woman's control of her own reproductive rights. That's not hyperbole. They've said it. They want that. So in addition
or as Larry Hogan once said when he killed the red line, I ran on it.
That's what I'm saying. It's the Maya Angelou
I'm running
thing, right?
on taking away your uterus. I'm running on it.
Believe them when they tell you. So keeping an eye, Dobbs may indeed be a motivator. I think as we continue to have the increasing violence in the country, I mean, whether it's inner city violence like we see, it breaks our heart every day in Baltimore City. You and I wake up every single day to another couple of people being shot and killed in Baltimore
I was driving
City.
down Liberty Road when the 7 people got shot 4 miles away.
Yeah, down in Park.
In the middle of the day on a Wednesday.
It can't continue. So I think between guns and a women's right to choose, some things are happening. Again, as we say every week, you factor in a bunch of crazy candidates that it may or may not make a difference. I was with some folks last night, and I said, let's not assume that crazy can't win. And
well, let's talk about this, because I was at the crab feast at Mako, and you were asking me about all this. Perception is Westmore can't lose. Perception is this Paraka guy's out of his mind. Perception is and Brooke Learman and Barry Glassman are both going to be on the show. I had a big supporter of Glassman, who I know from Harford County, come up to me after a couple of beverages, which was a little unusual for him, and asked me if I was voting for Barry or going to support Barry. And I said, I'm going to put Barry on the show. I said, Barry has no chance to win. I think Barry knows Barry has no chance to win. And I'm going to bring that up with him. Now, I would say this, that I sat with Heather Mazier, right? You've told me many, many, many times she has no chance to win, right?
Well,
like you believe she cannot win on the Eastern Shore.
Wait a minute. Let me preface that by, I hope Heather can pull off an amazing victory. When I say can't win, the district's been drawn to make it very, very difficult for any Democrat to win. Andy Harris is crazy. Andy Harris is not popular, even in that district as a person. But the district has been drawn in such a way that Heather has an uphill battle. But no one is going to work harder than Heather. But I'm sorry, I distracted.
No, but these perceptions that it's August 20-something And we already have the election done, right? Like, I'm going to have Wes Moore next week and just
Well,
assume as long as he's breathing, he's going to be the next governor.
I think Wes will be the first.
Because there's no way in a 70-30 state that this friggin' maniac, that the sitting governor, who is a Republican, has called a maniac, can win, right? I mean, literally.
Well,
I hope that's the case.
I think Wes, right. I think Wes will be the first. It's probably a great place to wrap up this edition of the Recon. I think Wes will be the first to tell you, let's not assume anything.
I remember we assumed the Orioles were going to lose 100 games.
Right.
That?
Oh, my goodness. Ago. So I think Wes will run as hard as he can. Speaking of the Orioles, they continue to surprise. It's where are you on? I know you and Luke have talked about it. Are you eager to see Gunnar Henderson at third base at this point?
I'm eager to see whatever they are, right? I mean,
right.
They should not be in we are next year mode when they're in a pennant race. So whatever Mike Elias thinks is the best thing. And again, look, these kids are going at each other's throats over money, daddy, mommy, who's getting the franchise, who's going to Nashville, who's wearing cowboy boots. At some point, there is money that's going to need to be spent on all of this. There's going to be an investment that needs to be made that isn't Mike Elias's investment or Sig Meidel's investment or Brandon Hyde or Don Mohler. It's the boys and the mother. And part of starting clocks with players and service time, and then more than that, I sat here for an hour today talking to Dennis Kalatzis about how the Ravens have mismanaged Lamar Jackson to get to this point, how the Orioles mismanaged Manny Machado and Chris Davis, amongst other things. This is one of those things where they're on the front end of this. They need to really manage all of this well. So far, so good. I think they managed Trey Mancini well as a business, probably not from a feeling standpoint.
They certainly did, and they certainly managed.
Would they be a better team the next 30 days with Trey Mancini in their lineup? I don't know. It depends on how Gunnar Henderson and
Taryn Vavra. Would Mancini hit more than Taryn Vavra? Probably, and I love Trey. Probably not. Wait a minute, but before we get out of here, we always run over. You just mentioned something because I have this discussion with people, and I'll listen to your episode with Dennis. What could the Ravens, Nestor, have done differently with Lamar? That's what I keep saying to people. If you've made a great offer, and I don't know, I'm sure you're trying to sniff.
Well, there's only one offer. There's $231 million of guaranteed money that the marketplace provided for Deshaun Watson.
I'm going to say, and if you're not,
that is the market.
So are you suggesting? See, here's where I am. Let's see how close either one of us comes to being correct when this is done. I think the Ravens, and I probably would support this, and I love Lamar. I think they've decided that $230 million of guaranteed money to anyone is not the right way to run a franchise.
Then you're gonna lose. Then go fight with your quarterback.
There you go. No, I don't know that you fight with him. I think you let him play this year out. My guess is then
you let him play, or does he play? I keep saying on September 10th, if he doesn't have a $200 million insurance policy, he shouldn't walk on the field.
Yeah, he's going to play. He's going to play. Now you're making I'd be shocked if that's not the case. I guess if they thought that were the case, if they got an indication of that, there will be 20 teams lining up to give you a couple first round draft picks. We won't be as good because, despite what people think, Tyler Huntley, isn't it funny to watch the fan base to do what they did? Tyler Huntley.
Look, I took phone calls on Monday morning. It's why I stopped, because it just wasn't intelligent.
Well, you would have
it's just not intelligent.
Right, you'd have gotten one after another. Oh, this kid Huntley.
It says it. Did you read here? It says intelligent. This is what I'm trying to do here these days.
I like Tyler, but let's remember he did go 1-3 or 1-4 as a starter. So I don't know what Eric and the Ravens, could have done differently. It's going to play out. I don't know yet, Nestor, how good we're going to be. If Ronnie Stanley isn't at left tackle, I'm not convinced we're going to be all that good.
Don, Ronnie Stanley's not going to be at left tackle.
I am pretty comfortable. I think you're correct. I'm not sure Ronnie Stanley will be at left tackle in November. Are you convinced of that?
I'm not convinced Ronnie Stanley's ever going to come back and play like Ronnie Stanley. Right. That's correct. If I see that, God bless him. God bless the team. That's great, but nobody has sold that to me.
I agree.
And
I agree.
nobody has sold that to me in the way that they sold it to Eric last summer, that he would be ready, he would be ready, he would be ready, and then he got out against the Raiders and wasn't ready.
Yeah, I agree 100% with that. I'd be shocked if he is. In the same way, I'll be shocked if Gus Edwards and J.K. Dobbins are real contributors this year. Now, again, it looks like well, I think we said this last week. This may end up being Eric's best draft ever, right? I mean, just phenomenal draft at this point.
Well, I mean, let's get him on the field first, right? I
Right.
mean, Isaiah
I understand.
Likely is an August contributor in the same way that Tyler Huntley is an August contributor, playing against August talent, all of that. I'd love to see another dominant tight end. I'd love to see another weapon. We know Lamar loves tight ends. Like, all of this bodes well. But Lamar running into linebackers and not being paid and not having wide receivers and question marks about running backs and question marks about the offensive line. It's question marks. All of it's a question mark. Then they have to go out on September 11th to play against Joe Flacco. So I'll be monitoring it. Don, I'm going to have a big announcement about when I get back from the Crab Cake Tour in regard to a new thing I'm doing at Baltimore Positive that involves writing. So I'll be talking about that.
I can't wait. I'll see you next week at Costas. What are we having for breakfast, man? What did you tell?
Well, they make a nice crab melt over there.
Oh, you love that crab melt.
Imperial with cheddar cheese. So I'm going to try to talk to Nick and Pete about some sort of breakfast crab melt. Is what I'm going to do.
There you go. I will see you at Costas next week.
We'll be at Costas doing the Maryland Crab Cake Tour on Tuesday morning with Wes Moore. Also going to be joined by Pam Wood of the Baltimore Banner, as well as Mickey Coachella to see this whole thing off. Then I'm having a beer with Hugh Sisson over at Heavy Seas. We are celebrating at BWI on Wednesday morning at I've never had an O'Bricky's crab cake, so I'm going to have an O'Bricky's crab cake at the airport on Wednesday. Also going to have a beer at Flying Dog through security. Big week around here. The Maryland Crab Cake Tour is presented by our friends at Window Nation. You buy two, you get two free. 866-90 Nation is the way to do that. And the Restaurant Association of Maryland, of course, getting you ready for Restaurant Week, September 16th through the 25th. I've got Maryland Lottery scratch-offs to give away on Tuesday. I'm going to get these Ravens scratch-offs getting going for once we get the Crab Cake Tour going in September. There's a rumor we're going to be starting things at Union Brewing at some point in September, too. So we may take the beer and Crab Cake Tour and make it a beer, or Crab Cake and Beer Tour and make it a beer and Crab Cake Tour and start going to some breweries, because all these crab cakes made me thirsty. I'm Nestor. He's Don. That was the Recon. We are WNST, AM 1570 Towson, Baltimore. We never stop talking Baltimore Positive.